We've heard you talk before about if you wait too long between films to make another, you'll end up being too old and you won't get around to it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you would get too old, but I think there's a momentum to it. I mean, it's so hard because you want to always have the resources that you need to make the thing that you really want to make. But ultimately, I think as creators, you have to keep creating. It's painful to wait around. I can't handle waiting around and doing nothing and hoping that something is gonna transpire. The perfect situation is gonna transpire in the future where I can make the next thing. So I definitely feel like I have to keep moving forward. And definitely as I age, it gets harder and harder to do the kinds of things, especially with indie filmmaking, where you're working very long hours, very hard. I mean, as the we produce and direct, and so when we're producing and directing, we have, even if the day is 10 hours on set, it's a 18-hour day for us just to make sure make sure all the food shows up, that everybody shows up on set, everybody knows where to go, everybody all the props are there, that at the end of the day we clean up everything that needs to be cleaned up, and so on. So it's a lot for as you get older, it's a lot to be able to sustain really long days for a long period of time.
Is it your goal to make a film every year, every couple of years?
I mean, I think every year is a great pace for making a feature film, but it is hard. It's hard to keep that up. So I think, if I were making a feature every 2 years, I'd feel okay about that. In the beginning of our filmmaking, we were doing one a year. Pandemic had slowed us down a little bit, so we had a gap, kind of in there. But yeah, I think every 2 years is probably a good pace if you're dealing with writing and kind of planning and actually shooting and editing and all that. I think if you have a 2-year cycle, I think that's reasonable.
So if you were to stay on track for a film a year, a feature film a year, we looked at your calendar, every month would be in some stage of filmmaking, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no breaks in that. And there's overlap as well, because you might be editing one film or waiting on something in post on one film while you're writing the next one, or you might be doing pre-production on something while you're doing post-production on something. There's definitely, it's not just that it's a longer cycle than 1 year kind of for each film, but it's really because there's like some overlap between them.
Why do you love problem solving, and how does that relate to film?
I wish I knew what kind of drove me to be interested in problem solving. But even as a small kid, I was immediately drawn to computers and writing code. I was writing code in BASIC on a VIC-20 when I was I don't know, very 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 young, and I just always found it fascinating. I always found it really exciting, and it brought me to go to school for electrical engineering, which is basically pretty much all problem solving. And I think those skills ended up being really really helpful when we started doing filmmaking, because honestly, filmmaking, especially indie, I keep saying especially indie about everything, but if you have the budgets, you can throw money at problems and solve them that way. We typically cannot throw money at problems. So filmmaking for us is really just a list of fires that need to be put out, a list of things that we can't do the way that we originally planned or intended, and we need to find very rapid solutions. And I think that kind of training and that kind of thinking process has really helped me be very dynamic on set and be very, it makes it much easier to accomplish, to make sure that we get everything we need in a day kind of in the can, even if it's not what we thought at the top of the day, was exactly happening. And I've done a lot of assistant directing as well for other filmmakers. And maybe that's one of my skills where I have to say to them, look, this is what you wanted. This is what you're stuck on. This is what you wanted. Now we have an hour, so we can't do that. So let's find something that works. And even if you don't like it now, even if you're saying, oh, this isn't what I wanted, it's not going to work, let's just get it. And then you can look at it later. If you want to redo it, you can redo it later. But let's get a solution that works right now. And 9 times out of 10, that's the solution that goes in the movie. And sometimes it's better than the original plan. Not maybe always, but yeah, it's important to be able to solve problems quickly.
What do you mean by the creative part of filmmaking is just 1%?
Yeah, there's so many logistical moving parts and things that you need to deal with that it's the creative part is great. That's the part that we all love and kind of enjoy. Then you have to kind of buckle down and actually get the people to show up. You have to cast the movie. You have to hire the crew. You have to figure out, what is going to happen with all the different departments. Who's going to feed them? How are we going to pay for this? Where is that going to happen? And then even on set, I think set is often more mechanical than it is creative too, because you're just trying to make sure that everybody shows up, stands in the right spot, and does their job. I often describe directing, the way I think of directing, as basically driving a train. I'm the engineer of a train that's going off a cliff, but I have to convince all the passengers that everything is going just fine. Like, just keep doing what you're supposed to be doing. Everything is going just fine. And hopefully we kind of land where we're supposed to land. But I don't really have control at that point. It's just sort of like, I brought together the pieces. Now I let those pieces kind of manifest.
I think you've also said, don't be afraid, just make your movie.
Yeah, I think so many people I know have been waiting and waiting and waiting to get something done. They've been for 10 years waiting to make their feature. And I think it's a strange, it comes from a fear. It comes from a fear that what they make isn't going to be good, or what they make isn't going to be what they want it to be. And that's going to be true. No matter what, no matter how good you are at filmmaking, whether if you're making $100 million movie, you're making a $1,000 movie, it's not going to be what you want, or what you set out to, or what you originally envisioned. But if you don't go out and make that, you're never going to have any growth. You're never going to have the opportunity to kind of learn and keep moving forward. And I sort of view it as I've got a million ideas. I'm not sitting there with this is my one idea. This has to be the greatest film I ever make, because I have no other ideas. I've got a million ideas. I can move on to the next idea. If this one doesn't work, I can move on to the next idea. I can make the next film, and hopefully that's better, and hopefully that connects with people in a different way. And by doing that, we show that we're capable of getting a project from start to finish. And I think that alone is really important to a lot of people. And so when you want to make a bigger project, people are interested in hiring people who have actually shown that they can successfully, move something through all the stages of progress.
Do you think humility has something to do with it too? Because maybe people think, oh, well, if it's not this budget amount, then I'm not going to do this. Yeah, I have to be a peer, and they start too high.
Right.
For what they're level.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, they have ideas about what the industry is or what it means to make a film. I've heard there are a lot of ideas that kick around that are old, kind of what I think of as old ideas. And so I've seen people be like, don't put your name on any movie unless it's like, a big theatrical release. Like you don't want to be, because you want to be a first-time director, because nobody's going to hire you if you've directed other movies. And I'm like, this just is not true. I knowing lots of people who have made some kind of transition like that, it's just not true. It's just not true. And maybe it was true 20 years ago or something along those lines. But I think people are still have that kind of fear, like they only have one shot. This is their only chance. And so I don't think it's as much, that it's not good enough for them. I think it's more just that they're afraid that if they do this, it's going to undermine their ultimate success. And from my perspective, if you make a bad movie, nobody watches it. It's not like you if you're going to get hired 10 years from now after having made a bunch of movies, those people are not going to go watch every one of your old movies. And even if they do, they understand that they want to see the progress. They don't necessarily care that your first movie isn't great. They care that you've shown that you've gotten better, that you've learned, that you're now at a stage where you can do something that's at the level that they expect.
So that's one of these sort of like old industry terms, don't put your name on anything that's not sort of major theatrical.
Yeah, I've heard of things like that before, where I have friends who don't want their name on anything, or they say like, I can't have my name as a director. Like, I'll work on this project, I'll even direct this project, but I can't have my name on it because it'll like look bad for me when I'm trying to get hired for a Marvel movie or something like that. They have these lofty dreams of like, oh, I should just jump from nothing to that. And I think for a while you would see more of the kind of filmmakers who are blowing up or getting hired on those big things had not done a lot of projects, or it didn't look like they'd done a lot of projects, and maybe secretly they had, but they weren't really publicized, or they're student films, they kept them kind of buried. But more and more, I think you're seeing a lot of independent filmmakers, build up and make the jump ultimately to bigger projects.